Hello everyone and welcome back to a slightly different GP Bikes video. Now today we are doing a league race. We're partaking in the league, but there's a slight twist. It is in first person. Now, most of you know, I am a third person player predominantly. The odd time I dip into VR and third or first person, but for the most part of the 650 hours on this game, I have been in third person. So for me, riding first person is fun, but it is very tricky and it's very hard to be quick and, more importantly, consistent. So doing a league race in first person for me was really taking myself out into deep waters, and I was really out of my depth with this one. But I had originally signed up to do this league and I thought it'd be great videos to make in VR, but unfortunately my schedule and when the league was being run of a Saturday night late at Saturdays probably just wasn't best for me, that I couldn't really run it. But in the end I said I'd do the right thing, pull out, give the position away and leave it available to someone else, so I wasn't holding position for most of the race that I probably wouldn't even be available for. But during Saturday I was actually on, and I got a message from the league host Doc Monster, and he said, "Do you want to join the session?" And he said, "Most of the fast guys are missing tonight, some of the big riders are missing, would you like to take their spot?" I said probably I won't be there, as we jump now to our qualifying lap. I'm going to keep talking over it. I said I'm going to be out tonight, probably won't be back in time. If I do come home in time, I'll race, but I wasn't holding much hope. Now, ended up getting home about 40 minutes before the race, and I said, you know, why not? It'll be a bit of fun, it'll be something different, I'll try it out. So, thinking back, I probably should have done a VR, but the fact that I had so little practice done, I wasn't even prepared. I had nothing ready to record or anything, so I jumped on, just got everything set up, and just jumped straight into the lobby with about 20 minutes practice, and now we're into qualifying. Now, big issue for me is this track is terrible on GP bikes for having weird crashes due to the elevation. So a big thing for me here was just trying to keep the bike on track and keep myself from crashing, because there's so many corners where you basically have no chance of saving. We have two coming up in the next couple of corners. This corner here is a bit tricky as the elevation really is steep at the exit of the corner. This one here has a bit of a ball effect. Soon as you get into this part here, the bike does G out. In the qualifying you kind of just hold your breath and hold the bike in there and kind of hope for it, but in a race you really can't afford that. And this is another one here, there's positive camber as well as the downhill, so the bike just naturally kind of turns in more as it gets to the lower part of the hill, and it really just kind of screws it. Again, on the exit of that corner there, the hairpin, there is a bit of a rise which can easily make the bike fold. This is another one, you come in slightly downhill, if you have any bit of rear brake on, for me I crash. There's so many corners here that are an issue. There's even more earlier in the lap that I didn't mention that I'll mention in the race. But as we come in out to the final corner, long corner, we get on the throttle nice and early, up in through 5th gear and up to 6th gear using all of the curb, and we're currently P3 and we end up going P2. Now, I was shocked to be anywhere even in the top 5 or 6. I really expected some of the guys in this league to be much quicker than me, and I was pretty surprised I managed to get down to a low 42, and we end up coming P2. But the only thing was, I end up on pole for the races, as there was about half an hour worth of messing around before the race could start, with people jump starting, people leaving, then couldn't get in, getting black screen. So we had a couple of restarts, we had to go back to warm up a few times, and unfortunately that cost us time and some people had to leave. Chipping, unfortunately, who was on pole, had probably both race wins summed up. He had to leave, which promoted me to pole position, as you can see now as the race starts. We have 4 red lights, off we go, pole position. Couldn't believe it really that I was starting this high up the field. I might not pole position considering I had so little practice done, but my pace wasn't too bad. Realistically, I hadn't much hope for the race because I knew doing 10 laps what I was set out for, but you might have noticed there, the eagle-eyed viewers would have noticed that there was no lights on my screen, there was only the lights on the track, and that is a telltale sign on GP bikes that you're starting ahead of the start line, which means this lap 1 here will not actually count. When you go over the line to start what will be lap 2 of the race, the lap 1 will start, so you basically do a double lap for lap 1. So you'll see in a second when we jump forward, I do have what lap it's on screen, just to keep everyone a bit more up to date, just because Maxfield goes out of whack a bit. So Maxfield says lap 1 of 10. I technically in a minute will be on lap 2 when it still says lap 1, but everything will be right on my end. But that can screw people over with fuel, people really cutting some extra kilos with the fuel. Thankfully I had just enough, kind of the measurements I'd done, I always kind of add back a small bit just for these things, because you don't know until you're on the grid. Now today is a 2 race, so even if race 1 went horribly wrong, I'd know for the second one, but you don't want to throw away a race, especially after starting in P1 and leading the opening couple of laps here. It'll be a shame if we were to run out of fuel. But anyway, getting to the actual racing action, I was just worrying mainly about the few corners I mentioned. I just wanted to keep the bike on track. I didn't really want to go out and push really hard and do mad lap times. I knew I wasn't the quickest, even though I started on pole. I knew my qualifying lap was one of those laps where I held my breath and managed to pull something out of the fire, but really that wasn't the pace I had. And as you see here now, we crossed the line. The timer doesn't change. Now we jump to lap 3, which is technically lap 2. So all out of sync, I know, but just keep an eye on the top corner. If I jump, you'll see the change in lap time. But coming into this difficult turn 6, X-Mortals on the V4R gets it wrong. He goes for the move. He probably was quicker. And into one of the another tricky corners, there's a change of elevation and change of tarmac in game that can easily cause you to crash. But he had a moment on the brakes, was in way hotter than I was, and unfortunately does run out onto the paint and then actually crashes. So at this point now, that was one of the big favourites for the win, probably off my back for now. So lap 3 of 11, it was just me versus Doc for now. And Doc is a first person player predominantly. He is only in GP bikes a first person player, so he was in his element. I was in deep water, so really at this point I felt like he was just going to ride up to the back of me. He was in all the testing I did before the race, and he showed more pace pretty much in every lap we could do, so he was definitely quicker than me. Probably just didn't get the lap together in qualifying, as it's easily done not in getting a quick lap in when you're under a time constraint of a qualifying session. But for now, I was really thinking, yeah, it's only a matter of time before Doc on the V4R is on me and passing me. But as we start lap 4 now, we're still leading, so pretty much happy out for now, but the pace just wasn't that good. You can see we do a 44.2. That's 2.2 off of what I did in qualifying. Now I know I was trying to keep the bike just on track and rubber side down and all that, but my pace was just a little too slow. I think I was a bit too conservative throughout the race, and unfortunately I could never build a gap between me and Doc because of that, so I ended up with gaps everyone else but not the fast people, and he just kind of kept in. You can see there now 1.2 again, he's just there about. So as we're on lap 9 of 11 now, getting into the last couple of laps, I was thinking if I can just hold my position. He had kind of followed me. He's probably quicker in some sectors. I think he made a couple of mistakes in a few braking zones that let me off and just made a bigger gap so I could pull away again. But I still felt last couple of laps he's going to turn the wick up. He's going to try, probably with a risk to crash, to try and get the win. So coming on to lap 10 of 11 now. 2 laps to go for the first podium, hopefully, of the FPV League. But for now, I still wasn't confident that I could get this over the line. I still felt like that if I got pushed, I wouldn't have the racecraft in first person, and that I would struggle to maintain a decent pace. And at the moment, I did a 43.8 that last lap. You can kind of tell at the end of the race I've realised that I've been too conservative throughout the race, and I've slightly picked up the pace. Now it's still not enough, as Doc is still kind of holding pace back. I feel I think I'm probably even a bit slower than him in front of him, and that's probably dragging him down a touch. But as we come out of here, I'm not really sure. I've watched this back a few times. I don't know what I do, but I just turn in way too aggressively onto the grass, Paul Espargaro style. And then I come back on track. I see Doc is there on the racing line. Now I can't cut across him, just not the right thing to do. I also have grass on my tyres, and I hear a V4R, and I was like, why is that so loud? It's Doc's bike. But it was actually X-Mortals. He was right behind Doc. I didn't see him when I went off track and looked over my shoulder, probably due to the elevation of the crest. But we've thrown away P1 and P2 to the V4Rs, and now grass my tyre, 2 riders in front of me that are quicker. I was thinking, no, I've definitely thrown away a win here. I'm not going to get this back. So I thought to myself, you know what, we'll just pull the pin and we will just send it and see what we can do and see if we can even pull down the gap. But just the V4R in general versus the R1, the bikes are so much quicker than mine. But these 2 lads were just better at this first person in this track at the moment than me. So for me, can't really have any complaints. In fact, I'm still P3 and 30 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. It was a pretty stunning race so far for me anyway, so that one mistake ended up putting me back 2 positions. To be honest, the fact I only made 1 mistake in the first 10 laps was actually quite confident and inspiring really, because it meant for the second race I could probably push on a bit more. But now you can see stopping into turn 1, bike is on the move. We still pull it down to somewhat of an apex. We're going under our PB as we are really trying to give it some this lap now to really see can we just put ourselves in a position where maybe the 2 Ducatis come together and we could still win this one. But I kind of felt I don't have the confidence to overtake them, so realistically it's going to be a mistake from either of them, if not both. But as we come in here, we brake where we brake every lap. The bike has what I would say a moment underneath me. Obviously being in first person, I can't really see what it's doing, so as I tip in, I reckon the rear wheel was in the air, and I would have touched down, it just pushed the front instantly. So pushing hard, trying to make the gap close at the end of the race, ended up in a crash, and we do come home in P3, and Doc Monster does win ahead of Tavella, just by, or ahead of X Immortals I should say. He finished 1.2 ahead of the other Ducati, the Honda of Tavella in P4, and John Ninja on the ZX10 running off a very good top 5. Now, P3 for me in this race was stunning. I really didn't expect it coming into a race like this with so little practice, and I've so little experience in this game on first person, so I was really shocked at the fact that I even got a podium. So pretty happy. But for race 2, I was thinking to myself, race 1, I really, for the mid part of that race, I really didn't give it socks, and I really didn't push hard enough. So for race 2, the goal was get the same launch, get out in front, and that is what we're trying to do here, and just go for kind of a bit more push, a bit more qualifying laps. We have a quick look to our right just to make sure the Ducati hasn't launched up or inside. You can see here now we get a green flag. Quick look over the shoulder, a couple of bikes down, not too sure who exactly got knocked down or who was at fault there. But as we come into the tight right-hander before the straight, we go a touch wide, and it looks like it was Doc Monster behind me as I looked over my shoulder. But already we have a bit of a gap, so thinking now Lorenzo-esque on the R1, just need to push and make sure we get nice clean opening couple of laps, build as much of a gap, because currently Max Hud is jumping around like mad. I don't know who's what in position is where, so for me, just kind of not even going to look at Max Hud that much in the early laps like this when it's so bouncing around, everyone's in different positions, so you're better off just kind of focusing on your race, trying to build a steady pace. I also went for a tyre change difference in this race. I went for an SCQ on the rear. I felt like I just needed a bit more performance, and the wear of the SCX in race 1 was pretty low, so overall I felt like I could take that gamble. Obviously I have nothing to lose, I'm only here to try and do my best and win the race, or do the best I can to race. I'm not in the championship, I probably won't do any more rounds other than this one, so see can we get a win. We've already had a technicality that's given us pole position, and we're now a podium in, and we're leading race 2, and looks like Max Hud has sorted itself out. So P2 is number 9, which is Zod, and that is what Max Hud says in the top right, and we have about 3 seconds. You can see as we come through the final corner, we have a nice advantage over P2 and P3, which is Andre, I believe, on number 65, so we have a serious gap over some of the fast guys. So P1 and P2 in race 1 are nowhere to be seen. I'm leading where I want to be, clear track. I just need to hit my markers, do some clean laps, and just see, can I just make a nice gap, so even if the fast boys start coming at me for the rest of the race, will I have the gap built just to bring this one home. So early on now, the focus was as hard as ever, just trying to get these laps, and you can just see here, I'm just using all the track. I use a touch of green there, and coming into this one here, I changed my strategy small by coming into this corner after crashing in lap 11 of race 1. I'm actually going on the limit of 14. I'm not going up to 5th. I think the extra gear change was helping the bike kind of step out a bit more, and it wasn't really settling me. And normally I don't like the bike moving, even in third person. I just like the bike being steady and smooth and predictable, and even more so in first person. When the bike moves underneath, it just gives you so much lack of confidence, you don't know where it is. But you can see here we're taking so much corner speed through the really tricky corners, and I was just really pushing and just risking a couple of crashes there, because again, like I said, I had nothing to lose. So for now, the only couple of laps, we need to build this gap, as again now we're going to use the last corner as our guide marker over P2. It does look like the gap has gotten bigger, like the Max Hud again is lying to us because of the weird lap issue. It looks like there's apparently 1.4 between me and second. As you can see, we come into the last corner, the gap back to what is P2 is Zod, who's number 9. It's actually quite big. I'm actually watching the timing screen now. Apparently I'm in 5th, so it's all over the place, but the gap between me, 2nd and 3rd is huge. So I pretty much have this one already sewn up. I just need to keep it rubber side down, keep myself out of trouble, keep myself on the track, unlike I did in race 1, and I should be able to bring this one home. So at this point now, I was pretty happy that I'd done the hard work in the opening 2.5-3 laps to get the gap. I had a nice gap over Zod. I wasn't sure what Zod's pace was like, and I knew he was on a V4R, so I knew kind of had to keep pushing. You can see I actually lose the rear on the entry there to the uphill left-hander, but we just managed to keep it wheels in line as we exit the corner. But for now, everything's going to plan. We have about 5.5 seconds back to P2 and another 6 seconds back to what would be P3 on track. So everything's going swimmingly. We're implementing a plan and it's working a treat. So for me, I think I pushed for another couple of laps. Then I just thought to myself, just take the edge off, especially through these corners here. This is where you make up all your time, because if you can absolutely take the piss here and not crash, there's probably half a second in that corner if you can really send it, not actually worry about the front end. That's why my qualifying lap times are probably 1.2 seconds quicker than what I could do in the race, because you're just so gingerly going through this corner here and just waiting for the bike to kind of get through the corner. You're not riding the bike is kind of just leaving the corner go through, and it's a real not a nice feeling, because each time you get to it, you kind of just tense up and you hold your breath and you think, oh, this could be the lap where I lose the front here. But up until this point, we hadn't had any issues. I don't think I'm qualifying I crashed there. Definitely didn't crash there in race 1, and so far in race 2 it's been pretty good. So whatever I was doing through the corner was working as we come up now to start what would be a lap 4. Now we do jump forward to, I believe, lap 10 of 11, yes. And it is Doc Monster ahead of X Immortal. So the usual 3 from race 1 are back in 1, 2 and 3. 11.2 odd seconds back. There is a crash rider in front. I was a bit nervous there because I didn't know where the bike was. And your visibility in first person is just so much restricted that when you see yellow flag or you see green flag or you hear someone near you, you just get a bit more tense because you don't know exactly where they're at. So it's so much harder to see, and it's just a bit more of an aspect that you don't realise when you're in third person, because you can see a couple of corners up the road in some aspects. But penultimate lap here, everything's gone to plan. The pace in this race, I was doing 42s and 43s, so I definitely picked my pace up about a second and a half quicker throughout this race, and I really was good money for my lead of about 11-10 seconds. At this point in the race now, I'm not really worried about lap times. I'm really taking it gingerly through these corners because I just don't want to crash. I don't think Doc Monster has the pace to close 11 seconds in this amount of time. So for me, pretty happy. I knew that X Immortals was right behind him as well within 2 seconds. So he had more worries from behind than I had behind me. So just trying to keep myself out of trouble for the rest of this race. We have about a lap and a quarter to go, and we will get our first victory in this league. And more importantly, our first victory in a league in first person. I never thought I'd say that, to be honest, because I've always used first person as something I use in videos and just a kind of a bit of entertainment purposes. I never think of riding in it to actually go quick. But I really enjoyed this race, and I must say I probably will do some more first person, and I might try, if I can, to see can I get to another round. And if I do, I'll definitely try VR, because I think in VR it would be a lot more immersive, and that would be really cool to see what a full league race would be like in VR, just because you have a bit more flexibility when you can move your head to look around. Whereas if I have to look left or right, you saw me to start this race looking right, I have to use a right stick. It's very jaggedy and jumpy, whereas this quick look left in real life is exactly what will happen on the screen. So last lap time, we're actually going under, so we're obviously confident in riding and pushing on here because we're doing a nice last lap here. You can see we're currently under by about quarter of a second to 10th. We're kind of gaining and losing time. So this race has gone absolutely perfect. Not many mistakes throughout the race. A couple of transgressions over the white line a few times, but easy done on a track like this with so much elevation and blind corners and just rise like that. I love this bit of track here, and then it comes down into this bit of doom. So much anxiety about that corner throughout the race, and especially the next one. I don't know which one is worse really, but they're just terribly unfortunate to ride, because if you go touch white here and you turn in, I think it's because the way the camber is positive and the track has like elevation change. I think the bike, just when it gets to a certain part of the tarmac, like it adds more lean. I don't really know why, but that's just the way it feels like from a riding perspective. But it really throws you off when you're on the bike, because you really want to throw the bike in and get it right in tight to the apex and get a nice flowing speed through there like you would on the GP games. But unfortunately on the GP bike model at the moment it's just not possible. But we come out of the final corner. We're actually going to set our PB last time on the last lap. We're going to do a 42.5, so only half a second off what I did in qualifying. We win race 2 here in Portimao, and I'm absolutely shocked really. I never thought starting off today when I joined the lobby with Doc Monster to do a few laps in first person, I was doing like 44s and stuff like that. So the fact that I went from so much slower than Doc in the morning, and I remember I actually joined on his X10 and I was just doing a few laps with him, and I just, like, he was disappearing up the road for me. He was just so much more confident out of the corner, into the corner, midway through the corner. It was crazy really to see. I was so lost, and I think a lot of that was maybe down to the ZX10 being a poor bike, because I was crashing every other lap. And here is Doc over now to congratulate me, hand up from the Doc Monster himself. And in fairness, I really enjoyed this, so I might try and do it again. X Immortal is now over to join the party. A few burnouts from Doc, the 2 V4s and the blacked out livery. They probably have liveries on, I just don't have them installed because I don't actually participate full time in the league. But yeah, it was a bit of fun. It wasn't something I did a lot of practice for. I only did probably maybe 16-17 laps earlier in the day in the other session with Doc Monster and a few other people. So for me, really enjoyed it. Doc Monster acting the maggot, doing some burners, doing all sorts. Ducati won't be too happy about him. But yeah, it was just so much fun actually riding first person, and I definitely will try and do it in VR if I ever get the opportunity to do it again. But for now, we're going to jump now in a second to the results. So I ended up getting the win, 14.5 seconds ahead of Doc Monster. X Immortals must have crashed because he ended up nearly 20 seconds back. Zod on the V4 comes home in P4 after being in P2 for most of the race. Skeptical Ant finishes P5. And that is it for today's video. Now, I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more of this first person or maybe VR action in league racing. It was a breath of fresh air to ride in first person on GP bikes. It just takes me out of my element, and it really puts me under a bit more stress. It was such a different sort of environment trying to race and just trying to, like, look, your lap times, everything's just so much harder when you're in first person because your focus is taken up so much. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, drop a like down below, subscribe to see more, and I should catch you all in a not so distant video. Thanks for watching. See you soon.